Hi, I'm Lorenzo Loconte from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm going to talk about our work, Sum of Squares Circuits, which has been done with Stefan Mengel and Antonio Vergari. There are many probabilistic models in machine learning. In the most general setting, we use them to estimate the probability distribution that has generated the data. The reason why we do this is because we can then use the model to solve a number of tasks. For instance, performing lossless data compression with a machine learning model translates to computing several conditional probabilities. Also, exploiting domain knowledge and constraints in order to perform reliable neurosymbolic reasoning requires us to compute an expectation with respect to the estimated distribution. Now, among these models, there are very expressive ones, such as diffusion and large language models, which can be scaled to learn very complicated distributions. However, computing conditionals and expectations with them is computationally intractable and can only be approximated at best with no bounds on the error. On the other hand, there are other models, such as graphical models and tensor factorizations, where computing conditionals and expectations is tractable, so it can be done exactly and efficiently. However, they are often not as expressive as other deep generative models. So the question we try to answer to in our paper is, how can we build probabilistic models that are expressive while supporting tractable inference? To do so, we focus on circuits that are models very similar to neural networks, whose tractability and expressiveness can be analyzed theoretically. In fact, the framework of circuits comes with a theory that tells us how to perform exact inference in just polynomial time with respect to the sides of the circuit. That is, under some assumptions on the circuit structure that I will not detail here, circuits allows us to compute conditionals, expectations, and many other quantities exactly and efficiently. Also, we can precisely study the expressiveness of circuits, because it can be linked to a very long history of results in circuit complexity theory. In addition, circuits generalize many models, and as I will show you later, this allows us to better understand their expressiveness. So, what are circuits? Circuits are computational graphs whose units can be of three types: input, product, and sum, and can be arranged as to form layers. So first, the input units take an assignment to a variable and output the result of an input function, which can be, for example, a Gaussian likelihood. Second, the product unit receives the output of other units as input and output their product. Finally, the sum units receive the output of other units as input and output a weighted linear combination. Now, when some units are arranged in a layer, like in this way, they are equivalent to a linear projection. The circuit parameters consist of the sum units' weights as well as the weights of the input functions. Moreover, the output of the circuit is a scalar here, and in this case it is a function over three variables only. Okay, but how can we use circuits to model distributions? For a very long time, the most common way was to restrict the parameters and the input functions to be positive. This is because it guarantees the circuit's output is also positive, and therefore can be interpreted as a probability, up to renormalization, which can be done efficiently in many cases. These circuits are also called monotonic. Now, to illustrate expressiveness results, I will use Venn diagrams, where each rectangle is the set of distributions that can be modeled by circuits of polynomial size, polynomial with respect to the number of variables. For instance, this blue rectangle represents the sets of distributions modeled by polynomial-sized monotonic circuits. This is important because, as I said before, inference is polynomial in the circuit size. Now, our contribution builds on top of a previous work we did, which you can find in the footnote. So we found a class of distributions that cannot be modeled by monotonic circuits having polynomial size. And this is a key expressiveness limitation of monotonic circuits. In other words, we proved that there exists distributions that can only be modeled by monotonic circuits that have exponential size. That is, monotonic circuits having an exponential number of edges between the units. In order to surpass this limitation, we introduced squared circuits. The key difference with monotonic circuits is that squared circuits can have negative parameters and input functions. However, to recover probabilities and therefore positive numbers, the circuit is then squared and then renormalized, which can be done efficiently under some assumptions. Now, we show that squared circuits can model some distributions more efficiently than monotonic ones, as illustrated in the orange rectangle here. This means that while monotonic circuits require exponential size, squared circuits require polynomial size. And therefore, this result says that square circuits can be much more expressive than monotonic ones. Back to our work, we ask the converse. Can monotonic circuits be also more expressive than squared ones? In our diagram, this is equivalent to asking whether some distributions can be modeled by monotonic circuits of polynomial size, but not by squared circuits. In our work, we find such distributions. So we prove the existence of distributions that can be modeled by monotonic circuits having polynomial size. However, any squared circuit modeling the same distributions must have exponential size instead. And this is perhaps surprising because square circuits allow for negative parameters. We prove this theoretically by using results in circuit complexity theory, and the bottom line is that squaring alone can reduce expressiveness. The same theoretical result was discovered independently in another work shown in the footnote, using a very similar technique. Now, our results tells us that monotonic and squared circuits exhibit different kinds of expressiveness limitations. A natural question now is how to build circuits more expressive than both? Answering to this question is related to finding challenging distributions for both monotonic and squared circuits. We identify such a class of circuits to be sum of squares circuits, or SOS circuits. SOS circuits define a probability distribution as proportional to the sum of two or more squared circuits with real parameters. We show that SOS circuits can efficiently model a possibly larger set of distribution, as I show here with the red colors. To make this more formal, we show that some distributions not only require exponentially large monotonic circuits, but also exponentially large squared circuits. Instead, we can model the same distributions by summing just a few squared circuits of polynomial size. As for the other results, we prove this theoretically and therefore show that SOS circuits can surpass the expressiveness limitations of both monotonic and squared circuits. The expressiveness results that I've just shown are consistent with our experiments. In our paper, we evaluate monotonic and squared circuits on density estimation benchmarks and compare them based on the log likelihood, so the higher the better. First, we show that a single squared circuit can perform worse than monotonic ones. On the other hand, some of squared circuits achieve higher likelihoods than both squared circuits and monotonic ones, as shown here in red. Moreover, we scale these models up to 1 billion of parameters on image datasets, and we compare them based on bits per dimension, so the lower the better. For these experiments, we also introduce SOS circuits with complex parameters in green, or that have been obtained by multiplying a monotonic and a squared circuit in red. We again show that SOS circuits scale better and achieve better performances. Finally, we connect with other probabilistic models and show how our theoretical results helps us understand why they are expressive. So we connect to models from the kernel methods literatures, such as positive semi-definite models and squared narrow families, but also Bohr machines that arise from quantum physics and that have complex parameters instead. In the paper, we show they can all be reduced to SOS circuits, so we now understand why they are expressive, and that's because they sum many squared circuits or have complex parameters. To summarize, we provide a precise expressiveness characterization of square circuits. We introduce SOS circuits that can be much more expressive than both monotonic and squared circuits. And lastly, we show how SOS circuits generalize other models, and therefore we now better understand why they are expressive. So if you want to learn more, you can check out the paper and the code.